Commissioner Gordon. Bane has escaped.
You fell. Maybe you stayed down longer than you should have. Maybe you curled up in your defeat and called it a phase. Maybe you convinced yourself that this was just how life is now. Quiet, empty, directionless. You watched others pass you by, carving lives from ambition, while you sank further into silence. You kept telling yourself you'd return when the time was right, when you were ready, when the pain dulled. But the truth is, you didn't want to come back. You wanted the world to apologize first. You wanted it to admit it broke you. But the world never apologizes. It only waits. And now it's waiting for you to remember who you were before you lost your fire, before you let defeat become your identity. There was a time when you moved with purpose, when the thought of giving up never even occurred to you. You had fire in your chest, war in your blood, and a vision that pulled you out of bed like gravity. But somewhere along the line, you got tired. Not from the effort, but from the weight of disappointment, from seeing things not go the way they were supposed to, from trusting people who turned out to be anchors instead of allies. And so you let yourself drift, just a little at first, just a small compromise, a single excuse. But those moments compound, and one day you wake up and can't even recognize the man in the mirror. That version of you, the one who fought, who believed, who refused to stay quiet, is not gone. He's buried, under layers of regret, delay, false promises, under the noise of people who convinced you to stay safe, stay small, stay predictable. But even now you feel it, that spark, that quiet whisper in your chest that tells you this isn't over, that you were made for more than this version of yourself, that this stillness, this numbness, this internal grave you've been living in, it doesn't have to be the end. You've suffered enough. You've played dead long enough, and the world won't hand you a second chance. You'll have to take it. You don't need anyone's permission to rise. You don't need the conditions to be perfect. You don't need a sign or a speech or a crowd cheering your name. What you need is to stop waiting, waiting for motivation, waiting for life to feel fair again, waiting for someone to reach into your darkness and pull you out. That's not coming. No one's coming. No one owes you that. And that's not a tragedy, it's your greatest gift. Because the man who pulls himself out of the fire is not the same man who fell into it. He's colder, sharper, focused. Not because he forgot what hurt him, but because he used it to forge something far more dangerous. The comeback is not a return to who you were. It is the birth of who you were meant to be. Because the old you wasn't ready. The old you was still trying to please everyone, still afraid of failure, still negotiating with mediocrity. That version of you had potential but no edge, charisma but no fangs. This new version, this forged in silence, sharpened by defeat version, he doesn't care what the world thinks. He doesn't wait for acceptance. He takes what he came for, not with noise but with certainty, not with rage but with resolve. There will be resistance. Your habits, your doubts, your fears, they won't go quietly. They've grown comfortable in your mind. You fed them every time you hit snooze, every time you said tomorrow, every time you chose distraction over discipline. They will claw at you, they will scream, but let them. You owe them nothing. They are relics of a past you're about to burn down, and from the ashes, there will be no room for weakness, no tolerance for hesitation, only motion, only pressure, only results. You have suffered long enough to earn this version of you. You've paid in nights of self-loathing, mornings of numbness, days of pretending to be fine. That pain was currency, and now it's time to spend it. Time to invest it into a future so far beyond what they expected of you. It humbles their memory of your failure, not out of spite, out of necessity. Because this life, this second act, it's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving yourself right, about proving that the spark never died. It was simply waiting for you to stop lying to yourself. So what's next? Pain, progress, isolation, discipline, and eventually, power. The power to look at your past and not flinch. The power to stand in your own story without shame. The power to walk into every room knowing you built yourself from rock bottom. That's the kind of confidence that doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. It's written in your posture, in your eyes, in your presence. That's what this comeback is for. Not to return to where you were, but to rise so high the old you becomes just a chapter in the legend you're about to write. This isn't motivation. This is a warning. To every doubt in your mind, to every excuse on your tongue, to every version of you that wants to stay comfortable. Their time is up. You've mourned long enough. You've wandered long enough. It's time to reclaim your time, your hunger, your edge. The world doesn't need more spectators. It needs warriors, and the battlefield is waiting. Not for the perfect man, but for the man who's ready to get back in the fight. You think you're speaking to people, but most of the time, you're not. You're speaking to the echoes that live inside them. The echoes of media narratives, of childhood commands, of societal slogans disguised as personal beliefs. Look into their eyes and you'll see it. A rehearsed script hiding behind a human face. Their thoughts are not their own. Their reactions, pre-installed. Their convictions, borrowed. They have never sat in silence long enough to meet the voice that belongs solely to them. So when you challenge them, when you ask them to explain why they believe what they say, they malfunction. They search for a soundbite. They quote the news, regurgitate their parents' fears, or reach for a viral headline and wear it like it's wisdom. But it's not wisdom. It's noise. They have never practiced thinking. Most people are not capable of original thought because they've never been asked to produce it. They've been trained to consume, trained to repeat, trained to agree with whatever sentiment keeps them comfortable, unchallenged, and socially accepted. Ask them a difficult question and you'll see the fear. Ask them to entertain a conflicting opinion and you'll see hostility. Why? Because to think for yourself is dangerous in a world built on conformity. It means stepping outside the tribe. It means rejecting the scripts. It means risking rejection. So they opt for safety, mentally programmed, emotionally unavailable, spiritually flatlined. You're not talking to people. You're talking to the algorithm. The world is filled with parrots dressed as prophets. People who mistake memory for thought. They can quote articles, cite influencers, mention psychological studies, but when you strip away their sources, there's nothing underneath. Just scaffolding. No foundation, no bedrock of contemplation that was hard-earned through solitude and struggle. Real thought comes from wrestling with silence, with contradiction, with discomfort. It doesn't come from scrolling. It doesn't come from trending hashtags or online debates designed for dopamine. It comes from sitting alone and interrogating your beliefs without the need to be seen doing it. It comes from doubt, from humility, from the kind of honesty that burns. You've seen it, you've felt it, the emptiness behind their words, the lack of presence in their eyes. You ask how they are and you get a cliché. You share something real and they change the subject. Why? Because authenticity requires effort, and they haven't built the muscles to carry it. They've filled their minds with noise and mistaken it for intelligence. They've been told their opinions matter before they've even developed them. They live in reaction, not reflection. They speak with the tone of certainty, but not the weight of understanding. Their confidence is borrowed, their certainty hollow. And this is where your comeback begins. You disconnect. You remove yourself from the echo chamber. You stop treating popular opinion as absolute. You stop treating inherited beliefs as sacred. You go dark. You go silent. You carve out a space where thought can actually breathe, where your mind can stretch beyond what it's been conditioned to accept. This is not an aesthetic detox. This is a purge of everything that doesn't belong to you. You have to strip your mind down to the studs, tear out the wallpaper of other people's expectations, and then you rebuild with truth, with curiosity, with ideas that are yours and yours alone. Do not seek to be right. Seek to be real. Do not aim to win arguments. Aim to understand yourself. You've spent too long downloading everyone else's operating system, too long logging into the collective delusion. Your comeback demands clarity, and clarity demands solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. The kind of space where the noise fades and the real questions finally appear. Who are you without the opinions, without the labels, without the borrowed rage and recycled hopes? Who are you when there's no one to impress, no one to validate your existence, no one watching? That's the man who's ready to rise. You don't need to abandon the world forever. You don't need to become a hermit. But you do need to unplug long enough to see how much of your life has been lived on autopilot. How much of your speech, your decisions, your identity has been curated for you. You weren't born with these ideas. They were handed to you like a script, and you've been performing ever since. But now the performance is over. Tear the curtain down. Let the stage burn. The world doesn't need another actor. It needs a mind that cannot be programmed. Most people never make a comeback because they don't even know they're gone. They've been erased by trends, by trauma, by a culture that rewards compliance and punishes originality. They look alive, but they're gone. They look conscious, but they're running code. You don't have to be one of them. You don't have to settle for being a product of your environment. You can choose to be a creator, a thinker, a force that doesn't move with the current, but cuts through it. And that begins the moment you stop consuming and start contemplating. You don't need more information. You need more introspection. You don't need to add more opinions. You need to subtract the ones that were never yours to begin with. Every comeback begins with confrontation, and this is yours. You must confront the fact that your thoughts have been rented, not owned, that your voice has been rehearsed, not felt. But that can change. If you are willing to sit in the quiet, to wrestle with uncertainty, to rebuild your mind from scratch, you will return with something rare, authenticity. And that is a threat to every system built on imitation. Your mind is not a mirror. It is not meant to reflect everything you see. It is a forge, a weapon, an engine. But if you treat it like a trash can, filling it with notifications, cheap outrage, low-resolution opinions, you will get the same result every time: chaos. You cannot expect peace while feeding your thoughts to the algorithm. You cannot expect clarity while living in mental clutter. This is why most men never rise. Not because they lack muscle, not because they lack vision, but because their operating system is corrupted, slow, fragmented, filled with junk code from years of passive consumption. And yet they wonder why nothing changes, why no thought sticks, why no action lasts. The answer is simple. The mind is the battlefield, and they've never trained for war. Reading is the sharpening of that battlefield. Reading is weaponry. It gives you access to higher-level code, thoughts that outlived empires, ideas born from solitude and sharpened through centuries. But instead you spend hours scrolling through nonsense, reacting to headlines, absorbing emotion without reflection. You take in 10,000 words a day, but none of them move you. None of them anchor you. None of them demand you think. You need to stop bathing in noise and start drowning in signal. Read slowly. Read deeply. Let the weight of real ideas crush the laziness in your thinking. Because this is the upgrade. This is how you begin to program your own mind. With intention, with care, with fire. But knowledge is a tool. Without execution, it's just decoration. So you must produce, not just thoughts, but action. Not just plans, but momentum. Write, building move. Speak when it matters. Create what you wish existed. This is the rebellion against passivity. Most people consume endlessly because it makes them feel full, but they never digest. They never express. They hoard information and call it intelligence. You must flip the process. Input must lead to output. Every idea must turn into action. Every insight must turn into pressure against reality. That's how you bend life. Not by collecting thoughts like trophies, but by slamming them into the earth until something grows. You react too much, to news, to opinions, to distractions disguised as opportunities. Every alert pulls you out of your frame. Every trend forces you to perform. And the more you react, the less you exist. You become a puppet, your strings pulled by algorithms, your moods dictated by pixels. There is no comeback in reaction. Reaction is submission. Reaction is weakness masquerading as awareness. The comeback begins when you become unshakable, when your mood isn't owned by headlines, when your identity isn't tied to validation, when your day can't be derailed by someone else's bad one. Detach. Detach from the culture of constant reaction. Step back, reclaim your stillness, and learn to respond from principle, not impulse. Focus. Deep, brutal, single-pointed focus. Pick one target, one mission, one pain point, and annihilate it with your full attention. Not 5 things, not a list of goals. 1. The world belongs to the man who can sit in a room with a single thought and bleed it into reality. Distraction is the death of transformation. Multitasking is the graveyard of intention. Your brain has been rewired to crave novelty, to chase stimulation, to shift gears every 5 seconds. And that's exactly why you've been spinning your wheels. Focus is not a trend. It is the gateway to mastery, and mastery is the requirement for your return. But the paradox is this: you must also zoom out. You must learn to let go. Control is a tool, not a lifestyle. You can't micromanage existence. You can't white-knuckle your way through life and call it discipline. There is a higher game, and the second half of thinking clearly is surrendering cleanly, not out of laziness, but out of wisdom. Zoom out. See the larger game. See that the setbacks, the chaos, the betrayal, the loss, it's all part of a larger structure. You can't change the weather, but you can build the shelter. You can't control the wind, but you can raise the sail. Acceptance without apathy. Letting go without giving up. That's how you move like water through the fire. Train the mind like you train the body. With resistance, with routine, with respect. Stop treating your attention like it has no value. Your focus is gold. Stop wasting it on garbage. You must run mental drills. You must journal. You must challenge your assumptions. You must sit with discomfort. You must look at your own beliefs and try to break them. You must sharpen yourself through reading, movement, stillness, and reflection. Mental fitness is not optional. It is the baseline for leadership. And if your mind is lazy, your comeback will collapse under pressure. But just like muscle, the mind must recover. You are not a robot. You are not a machine. You need silence. You need stillness. Not as a reward, but as a rhythm. Rest is not retreat. It is reload. It is recalibration. The mind processes in pause. It learns in the gaps. You can't solve your deepest questions with constant stimulation. Step away. Touch grass. Breathe without performing. Take back your breath from the shallow pace of online addiction. Rest, real rest, is rebellion. And in that rebellion, your clarity returns. Your center returns. Your edge returns. If you do not program your mind, someone else will, and they already have. Every ad, every post, every broadcast, they are rewriting your thoughts in real time, without your consent, without your awareness. Your default settings are not yours. They were installed through repetition, through exposure, through silent consent. The only cure is reprogramming. The only path forward is mental sovereignty. That means deleting what doesn't serve you, installing new routines, reading hard things, writing painful truths, facing the mirror, and committing fully to becoming the kind of man who thinks in systems, not slogans. This is the second pillar of your comeback. Master your mind or lose your future. No one is coming to do it for you. Build the mental code that builds the man. You were not built to play one note. You were not meant to live inside a single title, a fixed role, a tiny cage of talent. The new world does not reward the man who knows one thing and repeats it until he dies. That world is gone, replaced. We are now in the age of dynamic chaos, where everything shifts, and only those who can adapt with intensity and purpose rise. The future belongs to the specialized generalist, the man who can do many things with high skill, but knows exactly when to go all in on one. The man who can be a strategist on Monday, a craftsman on Tuesday, a communicator on Wednesday, and a killer executor every day in between. This is the final evolution. The last form, this is where your comeback locks in. Mastery now is not about isolation. It's about integration. The man who reads deeply, builds ruthlessly, speaks with clarity, adapts with speed, and still knows when to go silent. That man is unstoppable. He is not chasing opportunities. He is creating them. He is not just climbing ladders. He is building towers. And when the world looks for leaders, it will look for men like this. Men who are not simply good at one thing, but understand how everything connects. This doesn't mean you scatter your focus. It means you become the architect of your own toolkit. You become the rare force who can move across domains, connect dots others can't even see, and still go deep when depth is demanded. This is not about being everything to everyone. This is about becoming everything you need to be, when it matters. When the room goes quiet and it's your move, do you only know one way to play? Or can you switch styles, shift gears, recalibrate your weapons and still hit the target? The old world promoted specialists who couldn't see beyond their lane. The new world discards them the second disruption hits. Because today, you must wear armor and carry a scalpel. You must be the battlefield and the brain behind it. Depth in your craft, range in your arsenal, precision in your timing. That's the formula. That's how you don't just come back, you dominate. What does this look like? It looks like a coder who can pitch, a designer who can write like a poet and negotiate like a shark, a marketer who can build products and deliver a keynote without trembling. It looks like a warrior who can sit still long enough to meditate and then get up and fight with perfect form. No more either or. No more choosing between art and strategy, thinking and doing, emotion and logic. The new you is a fusion of all of it, sharpened, tuned, trained to respond to whatever the mission demands without losing the thread of who you are. This is the final part of your comeback. You are no longer just the man who rose. You are the man who evolved. You are not limited by identity. You are expanded by versatility. And now, the world has no idea what you're capable of next. This is the final part of your comeback. You're no longer just the man who rose. You're the man who evolved. You're not limited by identity. You're expanded by versatility. And now, the world has no idea what you're capable of next.